That was a nice move by Pipkins, taking it right to the rack himself. Wide open three, left wing, and it's good. Nylon, the dunk likes that, Matt.
A three from the right side, and it's good! The one, Pipkins, the man, yet again.
Jeff Battle, the American Dream.
Hello and welcome to The Flex. I'm Matt St. Jean.
This is Joe Howie.
And we're happy we're together for the first time recording a podcast all season long. And it's a good one. Friars beating DePaul 57-47. Even with a coaching change, even with last-second roster decisions, Friars pull out the much-needed road win.
This was a good one, Matt. This was, well, actually, wasn't great. It was kind of ugly. Obviously, the big concern in Friartown right now is what's wrong with Ed Cooley. About 15 minutes before the game, it was released that he would not be coaching due to a non-COVID related issue. It didn't say illness. It did say issue.
Now they're saying illness. Now they're saying he felt ill before the game. Yeah.
Isaiah Cooley did tweet a frowny face emoji with the word "ugh" before the game. So obviously, we hope all is well with Coach. But hey, tip of the hat to Jeff Battle, who is the first assistant off the bench tonight. He did a pretty good job coaching. You could see there were some major gaps in the coaching style between Ed and Jeff Battle. I think one for certain is rotations, Matt. I know you and I were talking about this. We were watching the game together for the first time since last March. And
the last time they played DePaul at the Dunk, that's the last time we watched a game together.
Wow. I didn't even think of that. The last time Matt and I were in person together for a Providence game was the Providence sweep over DePaul at the Dunk.
Yeah, 93-55.
That was a fun one. But
yeah, it was.
Back to Jeff Battle, the rotation was different.
Mm-hmm.
In the first half, I think the starting five was on there for 6 full minutes without a substitution, which, listen, Ed Cooley, he's quick to go to the bench.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, if someone messes up or if he sees a matchup he wants to take advantage of or exploit, he will go to the bench. And Jeff Battle did not do that until around the under 14 mark.
Yeah, and I think Jeff Battle was more conservative in general. He was slower to make changes, both to react to what was happening on the floor and just like your typical rest substitutions, which is going to happen if it's an assist. I mean, Jeff Battle's been around for forever. You know he knows how this works, but this is the first time he's been a head coach since he was a high school head coach back in the 80s. So he's still figuring some of this stuff out, and anybody in that situation, you're going to be a little bit more conservative than aggressive. It's not like he's going to go in there and Duke's going to miss a shot and he's going to pull him. Even if that's what Cooley would have done, Jeff Battle's not going to be the guy that does that.
No, you're right. I think for him going conservative in this matchup, it's not like you're playing Creighton or Villanova for that matter. You're playing DePaul, who was without Charlie Moore, which I think if Charlie Moore was in the game, it would have been a much different outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So credit us for capitalizing on not having DePaul's best player on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Freeman Liberty still caused some upset for us, so he is their leading scorer, and obviously did he score in double figures? Is his name? Oh, no, 7 points for him.
Yeah.
So wasn't as impactful as he normally is. The only player in DePaul scoring in double figures was Jones, and Matt
This is his second college game. He was not on the scouting report before I was looking at this game. This is a guy who, I believe, was a freshman who was coming in as like a second semester guy, and he had a pretty solid performance. He was going up showing some post moves against Nate Watson in the first half. I was impressed. I mean, it's DePaul basketball, to be fair, but for them, he was doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, he wasn't on the scouting report. He is listed as a forward, which means he is a matchup nightmare because he was playing a little bit of guard, a little bit on the wing, a little on the forward. He plays a little bit of everywhere. I think it's his second game. They're trying to shake out where he's gonna land
Mm-hmm.
in this lineup. But hey, credit to him. Came in 10 points. That's not bad for your second game in the Big East.
No, not at all. It was a solid performance from him. If we're going to talk about this, I think, to me, other than Jeff Battle, the leading story of this game has to be the defense for the Friars, holding DePaul to 47 points. Obviously no Charlie Moore, and that's a factor in that, but It's the lowest point total the Friars have allowed since the home game against St. Peter's early in last season. It's the lowest number of points DePaul has scored in a game yet this year. This is after DePaul scored 90 points in Alumni Hall back in late December. So that's quite a defensive turnaround, and I think it has to start in the paint. 9 blocks tonight, 4 from Watson, 4 from Horkler.
What more could you ask for from your starting 4 and your starting 5? I mean, everyone on Twitter, Nate Watson, only 4 points? All right, fine, 4 blocks. Listen, just because he didn't score in double figures doesn't mean he didn't have an impact. The 4 fouls obviously sucks. You don't want that on your starting center.
No.
But 4 blocks is really good for a center that's not traditionally known for blocking. You think of a blocking center, you think of Romaro Gill. Mm-hmm. Romaro Gill wasn't a double-double type of guy. He wasn't a double figures type of guy. But when you thought of him, you thought of blocks. Mm-hmm. When you think of Nate Watson, you think of double figures. You think of double-doubles. You don't really think of blocks. So you know what? If this is another evolving, is that even a word?
Evolution.
If this is another... Ooh, it's been a long day. If this is another evolution of Nate Watson's game, so be it. I will take 4 blocks from him. I think 4 blocks, 4 points. Hey, when you're being triple teamed on offense, 4 blocks is pretty good defensively.
Yeah, it's the old Wendy's 4 for 4 there with Watson. 4 points, 4 blocks, 4 fouls.
Spicy chicken nuggets.
Yeah, there we go. Spicy chicken nuggets Watson. That's what he was. But, I mean, he got sandwiched in the paint quite a bit. We talked about this at our little halftime live stream, that he had 2 assists, kicking out of it. Watts, I mean, I think this is the thing that we have asked for all season long for the Friars, is to not be one-dimensional. There were stretches of the season where it was Watson and Duke both scoring a lot, and that was about it. They weren't factoring in as complete players. Here, Watson, 4 fouls, only played 22 minutes, but got his 4 points late when it mattered to help seal the win, was an impact player on the boards, his defense was solid, and if we're talking about this, I mean, Watson only played 22 minutes, Croswell's playing 7, small ball. Yep. Quite a lot of small ball there, and I think the team looked good playing it.
Great transition, Matt. 4 players did play north of 30 minutes. Breed, Reeves, Horkler, Duke. I think everyone kind of was expecting that. Last game, all 5 starters played north of 30 minutes. This should be the trend going forward. We talked about this ad nauseum in our post-game over UConn and our pregame for this game. We said the Friars need to capitalize on their starters. If your bench guys are getting less than 20 minutes a game, that's fine. As long as they are making meaningful contributions off of the bench, so be it. So I think I want to talk about, when we talk about small ball, is the reintroduction of Jared Bynum into the lineup. Man, that was a sight for sore eyes, and I think my favorite lineup of the night, I'm sorry, I do love Nate Watson, but my favorite lineup of the night was Bynum, Breed, Duke, Gant, and Horkler. It was so refreshing to see the 3 point guards, or the 3 backcourt guards, on the floor at the same time. This is something we saw last season with Pipkins, White, and Duke, where Duke plays big at the 3, and you have Pipkins and White sharing the point. You saw it again tonight with Breed and Bynum sharing the point. Bynum did not look to be slowed down at all by the groin. He was playing quick. He was playing fast. He was playing strong. His first assist was to Duke, who hit a 3. I think that is so indicative of why we need him back. In his first 45 seconds on the floor, passes it to Duke, who is playing off the ball, who drains a 3.
Yeah, and
it doesn't get better than that.
That's what you're looking for from Bynum. You could see the confidence from Duke immediately on something like that, being able to hit that 3. And also with the small ball, I mean, Gant played 20 minutes, 20 up and down minutes. that big missed dunk, but 6 points. That's a contribution. They did draw up a play for him at the end of the first half, which we didn't like. But if they're drawing up the play for him, it means there's some confidence in him there. And 3 rebounds and a steal. He didn't have any turnovers. So I think with the small ball, Gant was playing a little bit better, a little bit more even-keeled, and seemed to find his footing a little bit more tonight.
Matt, this is something you and I talked about during the game, is that Gant seems to thrive a lot more in the small ball style of play, than when he's given the traditional power forward spot. So I think when we have Watson on the floor and we put Gant in, Gant is essentially playing power forward. Now, as a lot of Friar fans know, we don't play a true power forward. We play sort of a stretch wing type. Ed Cooley loves positionless basketball. The 4 can be the 3 or the 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Gant is in and Watson is in, Gant has to play big at the 4. But if you're playing small ball, Gant can kind of play a little bit smaller as more of a 3-4 split. So if Gant is in at the 4 and Watson's not on the floor, he's really in as a 3/4. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think he thrived during that. I think the most Greg Gant thing of the season is you poke it away for a steal and then you miss the dunk. I think that is so on brand for him. And Matt, you're right. They did draw up a play for him. It was the out of timeout, 40 seconds left in the first half play. It was a corner 3. I wasn't a fan of it. You weren't a fan of it. But if they are drawing that play for him, that means there is something happening that we're not seeing where he is making that shot. Now, it may not happen on the court during a game. He may be a great practice player. And we've said this before. Greg Gant probably does some great stuff in practice, which is why he gets the time he does on the floor.
Yeah.
So, listen, that play didn't cost us anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like he turned it over and DePaul capitalized on it.
You got an open look.
Right. It was an open look. You take the shot. Ideally, you'd like Reeves or Duke to take it, but hey, that was the play. You live with it. You won by 10, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and he only took 2 3-pointers. He didn't hit either of them, but it's not... Gant was not a liability. And
no.
That, I think, is notable because, I mean, he needs to build his confidence, and I think even though tonight wasn't perfect, this is kind of a step in the right direction. Also, I think it's notable that with the small ball lineup, I think we kind of figured when they went small ball it was going to be Watson at the 5 and then 4 guards. Instead, they played 3 guards, 2 forwards with Gant and Horchler as the forwards. A lot of that is Watson's in foul trouble, and I don't think that Croswell is good enough right now where you can kind of put him on an island at the 5. He needs some help, and Horchler and Gant aren't going to give that to him in that kind of a role. But I mean, this is a DePaul team that likes to play in the paint. They got 28 of their 47 points in the paint. Almost 60% of their points this season come off of 2-pointers. That's where they play. And you're going there without Watson. Horchler and Gant have really not been known for their defense at this point in their careers. And you're putting them at the forward. They're anchoring. And they're not a liability, not giving up things that they shouldn't be giving up. That's big for the defense.
Yeah. I mean, when you hold a team to 47 points... That's obviously a defensive milestone that you want to capitalize on. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I don't think Horchler or Gant are anything to write home about defensively. Obviously, they let up 28 points in the paint. That's more than half of DePaul's points were scored in the paint. But then again, DePaul also shot themselves in the foot. There were countless turnovers. Looking here, actually.
13 turnovers.
13 to Providence's 15. David Duke had 6 of those. So we turned the ball over more than that. But I feel like DePaul's turnovers were much more costly for them than ours. We emphasized on their turnovers more than they emphasized on ours. We had 16 points off of turnovers. DePaul only had 7. Again, that's completely due to DePaul's lack of offensive efficiency and our ability to capitalize on another team's mistakes.
Yeah, and that's what's huge. I mean, what I talked about in the pregame show is that on one hand, I mean, you would love to come out against DePaul and absolutely smoke them, but the reality is this is Big East play. You're on the road. Sometimes you just got to accept a win. And to accept a win, you're playing a team that's worse than you. What do? You don't make stupid mistakes, and you capitalize on the other team's mistakes. That's how you, at the end of the day, that's how you beat teams that are worse than you. That's why, I mean, Creighton just played a tough game at DePaul last week or the week before. It was only a 7-point game. But why are they coming out on top over DePaul? Because they're able to capitalize on mistakes, and they're not going to make some of the mistakes that DePaul does. I think that's what we saw from Providence. And that's too many mistakes and turnovers. But other than that, across the box score, I mean, the Friars generally played a sound game, a disciplined game all night long. DePaul didn't. Providence made them pay, and DePaul was not good enough to take advantage.
At the end of the day, this isn't a game that FriarBasketball.com is going to have a 7-minute highlight reel for. It wasn't an offensive clinic by the Friars. Defensively, it was very good. It's not your best defensive performance by any stretch of it. I mean, really, you did what you needed to win. It was ugly. It wasn't pretty. But at the end of the day, you walk out of here with a 10-point victory. You've won 2 straight. You're a game under 500 in conference play and a game over overall. And this is a step in the right direction towards getting yourself back on the bubble, getting back in the conversation for the NCAA tournament, and quite honestly, moving your way up in the rankings in the Big East Conference. I mean, we saw tonight Creighton obliterated Villanova at home. And by the way, that was an offensive clinic for Creighton. Yeah. I don't know. I think I know someone who said that Villanova doesn't deserve title of the Big East until they play Creighton. I know someone. I don't know who it was. Someone said that. It might have been.
I have no idea who.
It might have been.
No idea.
It might have been on this podcast, and I'm sure there's a certain listener on YouTube who is going to be infuriated by this. but losing by 16 to Creighton. Take that crown off, buddy. Take that self-proclaimed crown off. You are not king of the Big East until it's all said and done. I don't care if you take a month off and you don't lose any games. It's not over until it's over. And if Providence basketball has taught us anything about it's not over till it's over, it is not over until the final buzzer rings at MSG.
Yeah. Oh, and Creighton's in the driver's seat now. To be fair, the road is difficult. But if Creighton runs the table, and that includes a win at Villanova, which at this point still is probably the most difficult game in the Big East.
Because of that window.
Yeah, or yes. I hope, man, I feel so bad for them at Villanova. I mean, imagine not having the money for curtains. Oh man, my heart bleeds for the fans at Villanova to have to struggle with road losses in the Big East and then coming home and playing in an arena that's falling apart and just can't afford to keep the sun off the floor.
Oh my God. They're too. You know what they're too busy doing? They're spending their money on display cases for their national championship trophies. I mean, they have 3 of them. Yeah. It was one in 85, and then it took them however many years to get another one.
Yeah. I don't know how much shade we can throw on that.
That's like a backhanded compliment because it's like, hey, you've won 3 and we haven't won any. But at the same time, it's like you can't afford to put a curtain up that covers the court. I mean,
But Creighton right now, if Creighton does run the table and they beat Villanova, if our math is correct on the winning percentages in the Big East right now and the rest of the scheduled games for both of those teams get played, Creighton would finish number 1 in the Big East in the regular season. They would have the tiebreaker. I think the 2 teams would share the regular season title because of how the Big East does it.
I hate that.
Yeah, but
I hate that.
But Creighton would have the 1 seed for the Big East tournament if they win out.
You're right, and what's important to note here is that the number of games played also comes into effect here because Villanova has played less games than Creighton. If the schedule falls out the way that it's scheduled to. I mean, if the schedule plays out the way it is right now, Creighton will finish. If they run the table, Creighton will finish the same record but with more games played. Hence, they deserve first place over Villanova.
Yeah, and the way it would be, both teams would have won 80% of their games, I think, if Creighton wins out in the conference play, and Creighton would have the tiebreaker because that would include a sweep over Villanova. But let's come back to the Friars on this one.
You're right. We were getting too excited.
Yeah, we're straying a little bit here. The road gets tougher. This was probably the easiest game left on the schedule, a game at at DePaul. The remaining slate at UConn on Tuesday, which could, if with a Cook back, looking like he did today, that's tough. Book Night is probably going to return for that one. So that's going to be a very different UConn team than the one the Friars played 6 days beforehand. After that, it's going to be Xavier at home. This is a Xavier team that looked a little bit rough at home today against UConn, but also this is their first game back from a long hiatus. So that's a tough game. St. John's on the road, a team you already lost to. Villanova at home, a team you already lost to. So let's not get carried away with the win for the Friars today. This performance was not good enough to win those games. But I did feel like they built off the UConn one, and they did grind out a road victory in the Big East by doing the little things right. Winning 2 games in a row for the first time in a long time this season, for the first time since the wins over DePaul and Butler back in December.
No, you're right. I think emotionally, we've had a couple beers. We are together for the first time, and we're both 22, so relax, Twitter fingers.
Yeah. We got a little Blue Moon out here.
I'm drinking a Switchback Ale, which is from Vermont. It was actually recommended to me by my sports marketing professor, Dan Horn at PC.
Yeah,
so
shout out Dan Horn.
Shout out Professor Horn. This is actually, it's really delicious. I would recommend it to anybody. Switchback Ale, Blue Moon. But emotionally, after watching the Friars since, we'll say, January 2nd, this is refreshing to see us win 2 straight. And I think this is a sense of relief you're hearing from us. It's relief that, we're not as bad as we thought we were.
Yeah.
It's relief seeing that we can still put on a defensive performance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, given DePaul, it's a little easier to hold them to under 50 than another, like a St. John's or a Xavier. But also, it's hope. Because when we were down and out, we were far off of the bubble after that St. John's loss. These are 2 gritty wins. The UConn win was not pretty. It was a defensive win. Towards the end, it got pretty once you win by 11, obviously. Mm-hmm. When the selection committee looks at that, that's an 11-point victory. Mm-hmm. When they look at this, it's a 10-point victory. But they were ugly wins. But ugly prevails sometimes, and Ed Cooley says this all the time. Providence basketball doesn't have to be pretty. You don't have to shoot the lights out. But ugly basketball will prevail, and it will prevail for the Friars. So here we are. I'm not pleased with the offensive performance tonight. I think when you play a DePaul team without their leader in Charlie Moore, you should have. This game really should have been won by 25.
Ideally, yes.
Ideally. However, no Ed Cooley, so that's obviously a factor. And we weren't as crisp offensively. We had a lot of turnovers. David Duke had 6, and he is your primary point guard at this point. You got to clean it up because on Tuesday, this is a completely different UConn team. Akok Cook is back, who, by the way, chose Connecticut over Providence. So
that's a rivalry right there.
That adds another layer to this 10-layer cake rivalry. You've got the Hurley-Cooley rivalry. You've got the Connecticut-Providence rivalry. You've got Tyrese Martin, who came from URI, who now... There's so many different layers here, you can't even name them all.
Yeah, we got half of them in the first pregame show. We'll get the other half for this next show.
Let's just add Akok, who turned down Providence for Connecticut. Mm-hmm. However, the return of Jared Bynum adds a layer of a twist. It adds a twist to this matchup because if Jared Bynum is going to spend some time on the floor at the true point guard spot, we know Providence likes to run with 2 point guards. If he is playing the sole 1 and David Duke is playing the 2, that means that David Duke and James Bouknight, who is inevitably going to play and start on Tuesday, that means those 2 can match up directly. It's not going to be
fun.
It's not going to be Duke on Cole.
Yes.
It's not going to be Duke switching off of Cole and Bouknight. It's going to be Duke and Bouknight one-on-one, which will be a lot of fun. That will be great backcourt basketball.
Yeah, that's going to be a great matchup. I think it's also worth noting out here, I mentioned that this is the least points DePaul had scored in a game this season. This is also the least points DePaul has allowed in a game this season. They allowed 58 to Valparaiso a couple weeks ago, so this is 57, lower than that. And UConn, the Friars scored 70 on UConn at home last time. UConn currently has the best defense efficiency in the Big East right now, according to Ken Pom, and that's without Akok, who's a very good defensive player in his own right. So the Friars can't put together an offensive performance like this and expect to win against UConn, but we mentioned how Nate Watson was a factor. Nate Watson's also not going to have 4 fouls and only played 22 minutes against UConn. He got some bad luck, and he played well against the Huskies. I think having him down low, having a full game performance will help in that. The Friars were undermanned on offense in the paint tonight, and I think a lot of that is just you lose Watson. Croswell did a good job in relief, but he's a backup center who's a defense-first center.
Yeah, Croswell right now, especially with his haircut, looks exactly like freshman year Khalif.
Oh, yeah.
He is literally... when they recruited Croswell, they were probably like, this is like another Khalif for us. So don't be surprised if in 2-3 years, Croswell is an elite dribble drive defender.
And I love that.
I mean, listen, Khalif wasn't an offensive powerhouse. Loved him. Wasn't an offensive powerhouse. Could move his feet well on defense. I called him the wall because really got his hands up. I think Croswell's going to develop really well. I think right now he suffers because he plays in the shadow of Watson. I mean, when you're 6'8" and this is your second year, you're not going to outshine Nate Watson.
No.
But Nate Watson was triple teamed. This is one of the rare instances this season where we have seen him be swarmed by 3 defenders, but that just opened the floodgates for Duke and Reeves.
Yeah. And we haven't even mentioned A.J. Reeves in this post-game show yet, and that's honestly criminal. 13 points for him. He has, if you want a consistent third scorer, he's been that guy. He hit 3 3-pointers, 3 of 7, added 2 rebounds, an assist, and a steal. He had 5 turnovers. That's too many. But of the 15 turnovers, 11 of them came between Reeves and Duke. That's where it's coming from. Those 2 guys are who need to clean it up. Other than that, Reeves had a fantastic performance.
Yeah, Reeves is really starting to come on. He's not the 28-point scorer that we saw at Georgetown, but I'll take 13. Any night of the week, I will take 13. As long as he's scoring in double figures and he's contributing on other ends of the floor, I will take that.
Yeah.
Duke had a double-double, 17 points, 13 rebounds. That's pretty good from your point guard because he played the point tonight, except for when Bynum was on the floor. The 11 turnovers between the 2 of them isn't great, but play was sloppy without Ed Cooley coaching. That's no disrespect to Jeff Battle because I actually think he did a great job.
The American dream.
I thought his small ball lineup was really gutsy, but it worked. Mm-hmm. It was a gutsy. It was an onion move.
Yeah, and it was a necessary reaction to Watson.
It was because instead of putting Ed Croswell on the floor, who could have been a defensive liability against the bigger Nick Ongenda, he went small with Horkler, who's longer than Croswell and who actually held his own playing the stretch 5.
Yeah.
So that's a huge credit to Jeff Battle. He's been a great assistant. He's always held himself really well. He's a really good guy if you've ever gotten to meet him.
Oh, fantastic guy. There's a reason he's the school's basically top recruiter that isn't Ed Cooley.
Yeah. He can talk. He can sell Providence, but he is genuinely a really good guy. Mm-hmm. I met him my sophomore year. Matt, I'm sure you've met him a couple of times as well.
I have. Yeah. Oh, fantastic guy. I mean, you look at his track record. If you look at the recruits the Friars get, have you ever noticed the pattern of getting guys from the Southeast and the Mid-Atlantic area? That's all Jeff Battle.
Jeff Battle, yep.
Yeah, he has a history at Wake Forest. He knows that area. He brings those guys in. And you look at Chris Monroe, Jimmy Nichols.
Jalen Lindsey, Tennessee.
Yeah, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. How do you go to Tennessee and sell a guy saying, come to the Northeast where it's cold, where you're in Providence? It's not Boston, it's not New York. You're in Providence, Rhode Island. It's going to be cold. You're going to play in this small Ocean State rivalry. You're going to come here and you're going to play a hard-nosed defensive basketball. But they sell it. And Jeff Battle's a huge reason why.
He does a great job. Really, really does a good job. But with that said, I'm going to knock the players a little bit. They definitely took advantage of Ed not being coaching.
I think that's fair.
You could tell shot selection was a little more selfish tonight. Mm-hmm. Listen, these guys are 18 to 22 years old. If you have the ball and you're open on the perimeter, you want to take the shot. Mm-hmm. You're not exactly going to run the plays that are called if your head guy isn't there.
Yeah.
That's not to say that they're disrespecting Jeff, but you saw some selfish shot selection tonight from the guys. It's to be expected when your head coach is out and you're playing the worst team in the league. Mm-hmm. By the way, first sweep of the season.
Yes, get the brooms out. Get the brooms out.
Everyone get your brooms out. We have swept DePaul. But back to my point. Selfish basketball was played tonight. It wasn't obvious. It wasn't really tenured. It wasn't really... there wasn't a lot of it. But there were hints of it there. There was some selfish basketball tonight. Yeah. And I think that's where the 11 turnovers between Duke and Reeves come from. Both of them had the ball in their hands for a little bit longer than you would have liked. Even though Duke is the point guard, you'd like him to distribute a little more. Reeves, who plays a shooting guard, wing forward mix, was handling the ball a little too much. He had 3 quick in the first half. Selfish basketball. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and it's to be fair, we're on the outside looking in, and we don't know what the game plan is. And part of the game plan, I think, was to be a little bit more aggressive with shot selection. Friars got bit a little bit. I mean, David Duke had the early charge call on him that was not a charge.
That was a really bad call.
It was a block. He's bringing it to the basket and gets the bad end of some officiating there. So that's unfortunate. But, yeah, and that's what's going to happen. You don't have the discipline from the top down, so that affects the players. I will say I thought they responded admirably, and I thought it started with David Duke. He was a vocal leader on the floor, and he turned the ball over a lot, and this has been something he has struggled with all season long. He's a very, very good dribbler, but he gets put in situations. I mean, Bynum only played 6-7 minutes, so Duke's running the point for a lot of it. He gets put in a lot of situations where he's going to try to dribble drive or do something he can't quite do, force something, he's going to lose the ball. That's going to happen. He's got the ball in his hands a lot. That's probably the primary reason why he turned the ball over. 17 points, good shot selection. He got to the free throw line, and we didn't even mention he had a double-double. David Duke had 13 rebounds tonight.
I said that. I didn't emphasize it, but I said it.
Yeah. I mean, but that's like, he had 13 rebounds. I mean, that's the epitome of unselfish play. And Horchler had 11, too. This is back-to-back games with double-digit rebounds for Horchler.
Yeah, we got to talk about the impact of Horchler over the past couple of games. I forget who it was. Someone tweeted, Horchler has 43 rebounds over the last 5 games. Yeah, that is incredible. The turnaround that this young man has made since non-conference play, and even since halfway through conference play.
He found his footing in a hurry.
Lawan Pipkins. Yeah. This is the Lawan Pipkins serum. I don't know if it's some like little juice that they have in the Ruane Friar Development Center. I don't know if
this is what the whole Ruane Friar Development Center is all a massive cover-up for like a science facility underneath it where they just enhance and create these serums for players for late in the season.
If you are a graduate transfer and you go to Providence College for your final year of eligibility, you have to go into this little lab underneath the Friar Development Center, and they inject you with this juice that means you're going to be 50-50 in non-conference. The first half of conference play, you're going to suck, and then automatically it turns on for an end-of-conference run. That's getting ahead of ourselves because it's a 2-game win streak, and your more significant opponents are ahead.
Yeah.
It starts on Tuesday with Connecticut, but we're lightheartedly joking here. Horchler's turned it on at the right time. That's what we're getting at.
Yeah, and I think in the pregame for the UConn show, I made a comment that basically this is what the team is, and you can't expect the defense to get better because the players are kind of known quantities, and you're not going to have a guy suddenly turn it on. Well, I was wrong. I'm very happy I was wrong. And I think we kind of missed Horchler starting that transformation into a better defensive player. If you go back to the post-game press conference after the UConn game with him talking, if you haven't watched that, I suggest you go look for it to hear him speaking for himself, to really get it from the horse's mouth. Talking about
the Horchler's mouth.
From the Horchler's mouth.
Horsey Horchler. So, side note, my brother, whenever my brother and I play one-on-one basketball, whenever you get a rebound, we call it horsey. We've had this thing for a couple years now where wherever you play big in the paint, we call you a horse. I don't know where it comes from. Maybe like you're riding the horse or you're the team's horse. So we don't know where it comes from, but essentially if you play big in the paint, we call you horse. Mm-hmm. Last year it was Horsey Khalif and Horsey Nate, and this year it's Horsey Horchler.
Yeah.
Which actually rings well. So, Horsey Horchler, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a monster, and he talked about how it took him a while to adjust to the physicality of the Big East.
To get on his horse.
There you go. I think this is a trend you've kind of noticed with the Friars in the past. I think they've seemed to have played better in their second matchups versus basically every opponent that they have played this season.
Yep.
And I think a lot of that is a learning thing. I think these players are a little bit slow to pick up some of the stuff that you learned from the opponent, but quick to apply it the second time. And once they figure some of this stuff out, they're able to actually put it together. And you played DePaul for a second time. The defense was a heck of a lot better the second time. They did not let DePaul do what they wanted to do for long stretches of the game. They frustrated them, forced them into worse shots. That's what you're looking for. And on the offensive end, I think we noticed it. Friars didn't hit as many layups as they should have. They missed bunnies and they missed shots around the rim, but they got a lot of shots around the rim. How many times were there 2, 3, 4, 5 offensive rebounds? It looks like we're getting putback after putback, and they might miss, but you're maximizing opportunities. You do that enough, a shot will go in. These guys are good enough for that, and you're on the road It's a weird environment. There's no fans. You lose Ed Cooley right beforehand. You're a little bit off. You're going to have bad games. The next game, every single one of those putbacks might go in.
Yeah. I mean, I am 110% certain that Ed Cooley watched this game.
Mm-hmm.
Even if he fell ill right before the game, as what seems to be the case on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm sure he was in his hotel room with that game on. And I'm sure he was screaming and coaching. He may have been vomiting. We don't know what's wrong with him.
Yeah.
He may have been vomiting. His leg may have been off of his body.
Yeah. But he's watching the Friars.
But he's watching the Friars. He
Yeah.
may have been in the hospital watching the Friars. We don't know. He was watching the game. That's bottom line. Matt, you brought up a point. The Friars always play better against opponents the second time around.
Mm-hmm.
I think with the exception of the 2018-2019 season, that rings so true with this Friars team. We saw it last season. Even DePaul Marquette last year.
Mm-hmm.
We won the first matchup. We blew them out the second time around. So you're right. The second time around with each team, we always play better.
Yeah, I mean, look at
And
it.
we love revenge ball.
Yeah.
We love revenge basketball.
Look at it this year. Butler lost the first game, won the second one. Creighton lost the first one, won the second one. Marquette lost the first one, won the second one. And
The outlier is Seton Hall.
Yep, Seton Hall is the only one where they won the first, lost the second.
Badly.
Yeah, DePaul, they won both. Now, this is a big test with UConn because this is the second time, or the third time, the Friars have the opportunity for a sweep this season. Did it against DePaul. DePaul's bad. Had the opportunity to do it against Seton Hall, where the second game is at home, couldn't do it. Now this is the hardest chance the Friars have had for a sweep. If you're able to do it against UConn, win at home, then go on the road less than a week later when the team is probably a different and a massively improved team from the first time and go win that. Honestly, I think this game at UConn might be a bigger challenge, especially mentally, for the Friars than the Villanova game at the end of the season. And especially, you look at the roster, these guys know that they can play with Villanova. They've played a million close games with them. They've beaten Villanova. They know that they can do that. UConn is an entirely different animal. It's new to the conference. You got the rivalry aspect with Dan Hurley. This is something that's new. Villanova, you know the game plan. You might not be able to play with them. They're more talented than you are, but you can muck it up and try to play a game. You know what you're going to do. UConn, whole different thing. I think this game at UConn is the toughest game left on the schedule for Providence.
Yeah, this is there's no sugarcoating it. This is the toughest game on the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
At Creighton, at throw all that out. This is the toughest game for you because now there's an extra layer added to this. Akuk Cook is back. James Bouknight is back. Well, actually, that's 2 layers, and here comes the third. You beat them once, you beat them again, you sweep the Connecticut Huskies, who the national media immediately proclaimed before one tip-off, immediately proclaimed was going to be in the top of the Big East.
Yeah.
You sweep the preseason summer 2020 Big East champions.
Mm-hmm.
You sweep them. There's no hint of anger in my voice there. No hint of, hey, wait till it actually happens there. But anyway, this is probably going to be the toughest game of the season. You know damn well that Dan Hurley is licking his chops right now at the opportunity to play Ed Cooley and the Friars again with 2 new pieces that we didn't see the first time.
And you know Dan Hurley's,
Dan Hurley hates Ed Cooley.
Yeah, and Ed Cooley's had his goat for the whole, basically their entire career. Dan Hurley has 1 win against him. This is probably the most talented team that Dan Hurley has ever had to play against the Friars. So he's going to bring out all the stops. And the other thing is, confidence is so key for the Friars. We've talked about it, how they win at the end of the season. They put things together. They put together these win streaks. And I think the third win is really when it becomes a winning streak. That's when it goes from, all right, you can win 2 games in a row kind of by accident or by the schedule, especially in conference play, or just a little bit of luck. 3 games in a row, if you win 3 games in a row, you're doing something right. Friars haven't done that since the end of last season against Big East opponents. And that's what gets you over the hump. If you beat UConn on the road, now you're playing confident basketball. Now you're starting to get locked in, and that almost makes the games against Xavier and St. John's a little bit easier because now you know, all right, we can be good. We've proven it on the floor. We've beaten good teams. We can play at this level. You can you're not going to coast, but you're locked in to a tier higher at that point, and that's kind of what helps you if you go play Villanova. You lose to UConn, and it's tough to show up against Xavier, St. John's, or Villanova.
Not to mention, you win 3 in a row after a 3-game skid. Your confidence is through the ceiling. I like the point you said, Matt. You're not coasting. I don't think we've ever seen an Ed Cooley team coast. Mm-hmm. Maybe in the 2018-2019 season there was some coasting there.
Near the end, yeah.
I think that team knew they weren't going to do anything special. Mm-hmm. They knew it was a rebuilding year. This was not a rebuilding year. A rebuilding year. That was weird pronunciation. I don't know how that came out. This is not a rebuilding year. So the fact that we are as bad as our record is, mm-hmm. It's shocking because this is not supposed to be a rebuilding year.
No.
So
and we're above 500 though now.
We are above 500. 11 and 10. Ideally, you'd like to keep it at 10 losses for the remainder of the season. Yeah. You don't know if that's a possibility. It certainly is, given the history of this program. You don't know if it's certain. With all of this said about the gravity and all that of the UConn game, this may be the one loss that is permissible by NCAA tournament standards left on our schedule.
I agree.
This may be the one loss that you get away with without a slap on the wrist in terms of Selection Sunday. Yeah. Because you already beat them. It's a good team that has 2 new players. And if you lose this game and you win out, that also means you beat Villanova, who will definitely be a top 10 ranked team.
Yeah. Now we're going to have more for you on this UConn game in our pregame show. We're getting a little bit carried away talking about the Huskies in the future, but we're optimistic because it's 2 wins in a row, and we talk about all the time how the Friars lock in at the end of the season, and it's that magic number of 6 games. Well, we hit the 6-game mark, and it's 2 wins in a row. Feels like deja vu a little bit. And it's good. I mean, you go back to last season or 2016. I mean, not all those wins in that win streak are super pretty. The second game in the win streak last year for the Friars at the end of the season, a road win at Georgetown by 10. That was not a pretty game. That was a gritty, grinded-out win. What did they do after that? You come home against Marquette, beat them by 12. That was a much better performance. So that's, to put it in the context of things, there's nothing in tonight's game that says this Friars team is definitely going to win out and they have ascended to a new level. They're playing the way their talent says they should. But there's nothing in this game that says that they won't play that way. There's a lot of really positive signs. They responded well to adversity, and Bynum played. He's probably not going to play a massive amount against UConn. I think they're going to ease him back in. So there's a lot of positive signs, and you move forward. You take the win. You're happy with it. You move on to the next game. Let's wrap up here. Tell me, who's your MVP tonight?
My MVP is Noah Horkler. I think over the last 5 games, he's had a significant impact on the boards. He's been great at the 4 spot. And listen, we asked him to play big ball tonight. We asked him to play the 5 against Nick Ongenda, who is 6'11". Mm-hmm. So, listen, offensively, he didn't score a ton. I think 11 rebounds is fantastic with 4 blocks. So he was active defensively. That's all you can ask for from your starting 4-man.
Yeah, I think that's a great MVP pick. The Friars did out-rebound DePaul 45-43, picked up 13 offensive rebounds, so that's a big part of that. I think I'm going to go A.J. Reeves for mine, and this isn't even, Noah Horkler was fantastic. I think you can pick any of Reeves, Horkler, or Duke and be happy with your pick for MVP. Yeah. I'm going to go Reeves here just because he gave you that scoring touch in the first half, and Friars went into the break at the half with the lead. A lot of that was because of Reeves, and they never gave up that lead in the second half. The last time DePaul led was 14-13. Once they got control of the game, points DePaul started to come back into it, but they never seriously threatened to take the lead or anything like that, and that's because Reeves was hot early. He had the first 5 points for the Friars, and that was huge.
Not to mention 10 first half points. I think DePaul made some good adjustments on Reeves. Yeah. That with him cooling down in the second half, they stopped drawing plays for him. If you can draw up a 10 points worth of plays for Reeves in the first half and another 10 to 12 in the second half, he's going to be deadly down the stretch.
Yeah. And if he puts up just a performance like what he had tonight, pretty consistently for the rest of the season, if we said Duke, Reeves, Watson, if it's Duke, Reeves, Horkler, like they were tonight for the rest of the season and performances like this, you're going to be in every single game. You're going to have a chance to win every single one. And if it's, we said at the beginning of the season, beginning of the year, I looked and said, all right, we got a 5-man lineup or a 6-man lineup of Bynum, Duke, Reeves, Watson with Horkler and Gant at the 4 that can, you play those 6 guys, you're going to have a chance to win every single game. Add Breed's emergence off the bench. You got a 7-man rotation. With the exception of rest minutes and foul trouble, you don't need to go past that 7-man rotation. All those guys are good enough to win you games. And right now, for the first time all season, I think you're in a position where you can probably count on 4 of them getting you to at least 8, if not 10 points.
Yeah, I think playing time is really, really telling here. 34 for Breed minutes, 34 minutes. 34 for Reeves, 36 for Horkler, he played the most, and 35 for Duke.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it was an off night for Watson, but he is usually in that north of 31, 32 range.
Yeah.
You get all 5 of them with 30-plus minutes. You get Bynum back into the mix. Gant off the bench a little bit. That's your rotation right there. You have a strong 7-man rotation. You can sprinkle in some Chris Monroe and some Ed Croswell, and there you go.
Yeah, you're going to have 7 guys that are going to play 25 minutes or more. And why is Villanova so good? Obviously, talent and coaching and all that, but part of it is they have their guys, they stick to their lineup, and that lineup wins them games because game in, game out, they all perform well. These guys are not playing at that level of consistency for the Friars, but we've seen back-to-back games now where it's all right. You have the rotation, you have the guys, we know who they are, we know how it's going to shake out. You need them to go out there and win the games. They won tonight, so you take it and you move forward.
Listen, no matter how ugly it was offensively, a win is a win. A double-digit win is an even better win, and the second win in a row after a 3-game skid is an even better win.
Yeah, you just some days you got to sit back, got to be happy with what you had. You can ask for more, but you got to be happy with what you've got at the moment. You take that, and this is a win. Friars 57, DePaul 47. Friars now 11-10 on the season, 7-8 in Big East play. The next game is 6:30 Tuesday night at UConn. Kind of a weird date and time for this one, but we'll have a pregame show for you. So be on the lookout for that. It's going to be a quick turnaround on that. So make sure you listen to that one as well. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at @TheFlexHoops. So you can stay there for our content. We did a halftime live stream tonight. We did some pregame stuff. I think that went well. I think we're going to keep trying to do that. Interact with you guys because that's a lot of fun.
Tune in with questions.
Yeah, we love hearing from the fans. We were interacting with some people during the live stream, which was a lot of fun. So thank you for your comments. We enjoy that quite a bit. And as always, for Joe, I'm Matt. Thank you for listening.
Go Friars.